So in this final part of this tutorial, we're going to start off by talking about gradient maps. I'm going to turn off basically every layer and filter except for the image of the shoe bill. Next, we're going to go to our adjustment layers again and click gradient maps. Like before, this should open up a new panel that should look something like this. Double click the gradient bar and it should open up another panel with several gradient palettes. From here, you can edit your gradient map. You can select one of the existing gradients that Adobe has already created or adjust to create your own. Normally, I like to start with a preset that's already kind of similar. Maybe it has like the same amount of colors that I want, and then I'll customize it from there. So down here, this gradient is where you can customize your gradient map. Double clicking on a stop will allow you to choose whatever color you want. I'm just going to select this sort of light blue color. And then moving the diamond slider in between the stops allows you to adjust how many values are affected by each color. Basically, the gradient map changes the colors of the pixels in your image depending on their value of light and dark on a gradient scale. This gradient is completely customizable, and you can even add stops by clicking between existing stops. You can definitely use these to quickly spice up an image or even subtly adjust them to fit into another color scheme. We're going to finish off Photoshop with a few last photo editing tips. The first one is the Quick Selection tool, or W for the shortcut. With the Quick Selection tool, you can very easily select large chunks of an image. After selecting it, you can use the bracket keys to enlarge and shrink your brush size, and then you can use it to highlight the background until all of it has been selected. And I forgot that our image was a smart object, so I'm just going to quickly right-click our image layer and hit rasterize. This just gets rid of the smart object options and turns it into a normal layer. After it's rasterized, you can hit backspace to just get rid of everything you've selected. As you can probably tell, there are some leftover little slivers and details that were not completely selected. That's because this tool is better used for images that are highly contrasted with little fine details. When it's something like leftover lines from your background, I just use the eraser tool to finish it off, but not everything can be solved this way. Going back to our original image, you can perform a similar trick by using the magnetic lasso tool. The regular lasso tool allows you to circle objects to select them, but the magnetic lasso tool is incredibly smart and can follow similar patterns in your image to help you select the objects that you want. So I'm just going to click once at the base of this bird, and then as I drag my mouse, I am actually not clicking, but the points are being created as I follow the outline of this bird. It's pretty cool, right? So I'm just going to quickly go all the way around this bird, and when I reach the end, I'm going to click once again to finish up the path. And just like before, this will work better when you have a higher contrast image with really defined borders. So when you have what you want selected, you can hit the backspace button to get rid of what's been selected inside it. You can also hit the select and mask button up top to create a mask instead. Creating a mask will mask out everything you didn't select rather than block out the stuff that you did select. Next up is the spot healing tool, which is a great fix for small blemishes in your photographs. It is the icon with a dotted circle behind a band-aid. So again, with this tool, you can use the bracket keys to adjust the size of your brush. I would try to keep the brush just around the size of the blemish. I will say that this is quite obviously a picture of a bird, and what's to say what a bird's blemish is? So I'm just going to get rid of sort of like random marks on this bird, and you'll just get the general gist of what this tool does. So for example, I'm just drawing over this black line and this one as well, and you'll see that it sort of patches together everything behind the blemish to make it look like there was nothing there at all. This tool can be really helpful to get rid of things like stray hairs on a person's face, logos that aren't supposed to be in the photo, or other small things that are a little out of place. Of course, do not rely on this tool to fix everything in your photo. If you use it too much or in places too big, it will start looking super weird. So after the spot healing tool, we must talk about the clone stamp tool, which is often taught in conjunction. The clone stamp's icon is a simple stamp and the shortcut is S. Just like the spot healing brush, the clone stamp can be used to fix blemishes and mistakes in your photos. So at the top left, you can choose what kind of brush to use to clone stamp. I recommend using something with soft edges. So I'm just going to try and demo this tool by removing some of these stray feathers on this bird's neck. What we're going to want to do is copy pieces of this green background and paint them over the stray feathers. First, we're going to copy the background by holding down Option while clicking and dragging over the piece we want to copy. Next, we can start painting over the feathers, moving in a similar direction as when we were copying the background. If you want good results, do not rush this. Go back and forth between copying more background and painting over the blemish. You can also play with the opacity of the brush in order to blend everything together. The clone stamp works especially well with backgrounds with repeating patterns or solid colors. So that's pretty much it for this Photoshop photo editing demo. However, you've probably guessed that there really is a lot more to Photoshop. I would recommend you explore around and look at the many different things you can make with things in like the filter tab, as well as the effects you can make using the adjustments in the image tab. I also really hope that this doesn't seem overwhelming. You really will learn as you go, and there isn't a better way to learn than by doing, so really take your time and eventually it'll all make sense. Great, so the last part we're going to talk about is importing your Photoshop files into Illustrator and then setting up your files for print. First, we're going to save our Photoshop files, making sure to place them in the folder we set up for this class. Make sure you name your files properly and stay organized. We're saving this file as a Photoshop file, but from here you can also export it out as a PNG or a JPEG. Next, we're going to go back to Illustrator, where we can drag in our Photoshop file directly onto our artboard. The file will open up just like an image. So what's really great about Adobe software is its compatibility with its other software. So for example, if we actually decided we wanted to change the colors of our shoe bill image, we could easily go back into Photoshop, turn on our gradient map layer, or make any other edits, hit save, and then return back to Illustrator. So when you return, you should be greeted with a message like this, asking if you would like to update files that have been changed. Hit OK, and your Photoshop layer should be updated. It's pretty awesome that you don't need to re-export an image every single time that you make a change to your Photoshop layer, but just know that when you're working in larger files, that if your Photoshop file is really big, it will really lag down your Illustrator file. Also, if you ever crop or embed your Photoshop layer, it won't be able to be edited the way we just did anymore. So now I have skipped ahead to setting up your files for print. So what I have done is set up each side of my postcard as a separate clipping mask, each the size of half of my postcard file. We talked about this briefly when we were setting up our files in the first week of videos, but basically instead of stacking our cards the way we have them right now, we want to put the front of our postcard right side up on the bottom of our file and the back of our postcard upside down on the top of our file. This way, when we have our cards printed, we can fold across the center line or where we've created our original guide, and the tops of both sides of the cards will meet and the bottoms of both sides will also meet. Again, we do this because double-sided printing can be super inaccurate, and actually folding it like this makes it super accurate as well as gives it a little bit of a postcard thickness. Again, I don't really know if you guys are even going to be printing these since coronavirus and stuff, but if you are and you want to make these into a final product, I would also recommend you put a piece of sort of like construction paper in between the two sides when you fold them, so it really has that card thickness. So I've jumped ahead a little bit more again, but basically I've copy and pasted my postcards to make a set of 4 cards. You can also have 4 to 6 individual files, each with one of these postcards. That's totally fine as well. So next we're going to go print, but make sure that you've saved your file already. So we're going to go to File and then down to the bottom to Print. This will open up your print dialog. So at the top, you can select which printer you want to use. Make sure you select the correct one. Then below that, you can choose how many copies of the print you want to make. Next, underneath that, quite importantly, are the artboard selection. You can print out all the artboards you have, or you can select a range. On the left, you can actually toggle through and look at all the artboards that you have. So for example, if you just wanted to print one out in order to test out the print, which I definitely recommend you do, you can just put the number of the artboard here in the range. The media size allows you to choose the size of paper that you're going to print on. For this, I would recommend just printing on letter or 8.5 by 11. For this project, you probably don't need to adjust any of the other general settings. So next we're going to move on to the marks and bleeds. Whenever you're going to trim something out of a piece of paper, I would recommend you turn on trim marks. Actually, not even recommend, definitely turn on trim marks. And then all the other stuff, I don't think you'll really need to adjust anything. Depending on your printer and your print setup, sometimes you'll need to go into page settings and adjust stuff, or just in the general setup to adjust like two-sided printing, as well as other things specific to your printer. For this, we won't really need to do any of that. This really would depend on your own printer. And then you would be ready to print. And that would be the end of your postcards. Definitely print out a few copies in black and white before you go to color to test things out. Good luck! So this is the end of our postcard Illustrator / Photoshop journey. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope you made sense of all my ramblings. And I hope to see you in the next project, which will be the InDesign / book project. Good luck with finishing up this project. I'm sure you guys all made really cool stuff. And I hope you had a great first maybe month and a half of school. I have no idea. So good luck, and can't wait to see what you guys have all made.